More now on the breaking news from Ukraine, where government officials say a Russian invasion has begun. CNN teams have reported explosions near the capital Kyiv, as well as several other Ukrainian cities. President Vladimir Zelensky is introducing martial law and urging Ukrainians not to panic. Just hours earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a special military operation in the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine, an area controlled by Russian-backed separatists. The dramatic military escalation by Vladimir Putin has been swiftly condemned by many world leaders, including the US president, who said it was an unprovoked and unjustified attack. Live to the Pentagon now, and CNN reporter Katie Bo-Lillis. So, Katie, what's the latest assessment there from the Pentagon on the extent of the Russian troop mobilization?
Yeah, so talking to my sources both here in Washington and in the region, at this point we understand that it is still very much the fog of war. The Defense Department and the U.S. intelligence community are watching closely, are working to understand how this campaign is unfolding. Certainly at this point, all signs seem to point to the beginning of the ground element of this campaign. We know the Defense Department is closely tracking a reported incursion of Russian troops from Belarus, that CNN has obviously seen footage showing these troops moving across the border. The Ukrainians, of course, are claiming that there have also been incursions from the south and from the east. Intelligence officials are particularly closely watching this reported incursion from the north, from Belarus, because, of course, there's heard from one U.S. senator who has been briefed on the intelligence community's understanding of Russian planning here, that they believe that one of the things Russia may be trying to achieve here is to cut Kyiv off from its own troops operating on the eastern flank of the country, butting up against these separatist regions.
Katie, thank you. Katie Bo-Lillis there live at the Pentagon, just coming out to 1:48 in the morning on a Thursday. Katie, thank you. I'm John Voss in Atlanta. Michael Holmes returns from Lviv after the break with more on our breaking news coverage of the Russian attack on Ukraine. You're watching CNN.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Holmes coming to you live in Lviv, Ukraine, as Russia launches what Ukraine's foreign minister describes as a full-scale invasion. Air raid sirens sounding here in Lviv for the probably sixth time in the last hour and a half. Now, officials say attacks from Russian troops have come from Russia, they've come from Belarus and also from Crimea in the south. The Russian military claiming in a statement that Ukraine's border service, quote, did not provide any resistance to Russian units invading Ukrainian territory and claimed to have, quote, suppressed Ukraine's air defences. Again, we should emphasise we have not been able to verify either of those claims. Now, I'm going to show you some video of military vehicles entering Ukraine from a border crossing with Belarus. This is to the north of Ukraine, and critical that it's coming in from Belarus there, because it's a fairly straight shot to the capital, Kyiv, from there on good quality roads. CNN correspondents have been hearing explosions in cities across Ukraine, including near Kyiv, Kharkiv and Odessa, which is also in the west of the country where we are. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says strikes were launched on the country's military infrastructure and the border guards. Joining me now from Moscow, Alexander Bonov is a senior fellow and editor-in-chief at Carnegie.ru. Great to have your voice here. Vladimir Putin says he doesn't plan to occupy the country. He says he wants to demilitarize Ukraine. Do you buy that? What do you see unfolding?
Well, it's hard to believe to what Vladimir Putin is saying, because what we see, how we see now the situation, everything was made in the logic of special operation. The question was, for me, even yesterday, whether the recognition of the separatist republics in the east of Ukraine was a sort of special operation to cover the possible future invasion, or it was the concentration of the troops and military built up around Ukraine, a cover operation, a special operation to cover this recognition of separatist republics. Unfortunately, the first option prevailed.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you this. Vladimir Putin, he's spoken of the close cultural and familial ties between Russia and Ukraine, yet an invasion would cause thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of deaths of people in Ukraine related to people in Russia. What about that calculus?
That's exactly the reason why so few people here in Moscow really believed that this sort, a massive invasion, can start. Not in minor things, minor fightings on the line. It happened every time. But this massive invasion, exactly for this reason. First, dozens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, families died because between Russians and Ukrainians, which used to live in one country before 30 years and moved freely from like Moscow to Kyiv even before 2015 for weekends, not just family ties, but friendships, loves, and other things. And the second thing why people here believed so little on this possibility is the Russian mindset, generally the mindset of the people who live in this region in the east of Europe. And for these people, the worst historical event, the worst that happened during the 20th century was the German invasion in June of 1941. And the memory of this invasion, or memory of massive bombing and moving troops without declaring the war, was the worst thing in the minds of people here. So that's why it was unimaginable, basically.
Yeah. Important analysis. We're up against the top of the hour. Hopefully we can get you back soon. Alexander Bonov in Moscow, always appreciate your analysis. Thank you so much. Now, live from Ukraine, I'm Michael Holmes. Our breaking news coverage continues after the break. Hello and welcome to our viewers joining us all around the world. Live from Ukraine, I'm Michael Holmes, and our breaking news this hour. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is underway, with attacks reported from the north, the east and the south. Ukraine's Interior Ministry says missile strikes have hit the capital, Kyiv. Airfields and military headquarters in Kyiv have been shelled, and Russian troops have landed in the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. Now, according to Russia, they got no resistance from Ukrainian border guards and, according to Russia, have suppressed Ukraine's air defences. Ukraine's armed forces says 5 Russian aircraft and a helicopter have been Russia denying that. Video, meanwhile, from Ukrainian border guards shows a column of military vehicles entering the country from Belarus to the north. Tens of thousands of Russian troops have been conducting military drills there for several weeks. CNN's Matthew Chance was on the air just a few hours ago from Kyiv when air raid sirens sounded.
There's been an air raid siren just suddenly. Oh, here it is. There you are. That's an air raid siren. Several of them going off here in the center of the Ukrainian capital. Now, whether that's them just testing it, I don't think so, though, given the situation we currently find ourselves in.
And air raid sirens here in Lviv, Ukraine, in the west of the country, they're going off again right now in the background here. And that's probably the 7th or maybe 8th time in the last hour and a half that has happened. They're coming from multiple parts of the city as well. Local television reporting that government officials are telling residents here in Lviv to stay indoors, gather their documents and not panic. It's hard to see how that is possible given the tension and what's going on around the country. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky, he went on Facebook to address the nation. He says he's imposing martial law, but he too urged the country not to panic.
Today, each of you should stay calm. Stay at home if you can. We are working. The army is working. The whole sector of defense and security is working. No panic. We are strong. We are ready for everything. We will win over everybody because we are Ukraine.
All right, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, he's calling this a, quote, military operation to protect Donbass. Well, it's clearly much more than that. He made a surprise appearance on state television early this morning, Mr. Putin blaming the government in Kyiv for any bloodshed, but said Russian forces are not planning an occupation.
Whoever tries to interfere with us, and even more so to create threats for our country, our people should know that Russia's response will be immediate and will lead you to such consequences that you have never experienced in your history.
US President Joe Biden, he condemned what he called the unprovoked and unnecessary Russian invasion. He plans a White House address in the days ahead where he is expected to announce full-scale sanctions on Russia. Mr. Biden tweeting, "Russia alone is responsible for the death and destruction this attack will bring, and the United States and its allies and partners will respond in a united and decisive way." He goes on, "The world will hold Russia accountable." All right, we've got Nick Payton-Walsh standing by in the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. Atika Schubert here in Lviv with me, Jill Doherty in Moscow, and Katie Bolillis is at the Pentagon. Jill Doherty in Moscow, let's start with you. What do you think Vladimir Putin is up to? What is his calculus here? Because it's certainly not what he's been saying was going to happen over recent weeks.
Well, his objectives, he says, Michael, are to demilitarize and denazify the country, Ukraine. So demilitarize could be, obviously, he's been taking out military installations, airports, etc. Denazify is kind of a different question. How do you do that? Who does he define as Nazis? You know, over the past weeks, actually for a very long time, the Russian media have been talking about Ukraine as a neo-Nazi country. And today, in fact, and yesterday, there were constant reports about Nazis, both from World War II and supposedly from today. So how he's going to do that, I really don't know. But that speech, I think when you look at it, it popped up around 5:30 in the morning, Moscow time, just before some of those missiles began hitting in Ukraine. And as you look at it, I've been reading it and rereading it, he's making kind of a limited argument that he had to protect the people in those breakaway regions that he recognized officially just a couple of days before. But then he broadened it. He attacked NATO as supporting neo-Nazis. And then in an extraordinary moment, he spoke directly to the Ukrainian military, saying essentially, give up your weapons, go home, and nothing will happen to you. So it was really quite amazing. And that last quote that you heard where he warns anyone, and that presumably could be NATO, the United States, Europe, et cetera, not to get involved, or they would see something that they've never seen before. So it's really quite extraordinary. It had a real edge to it. It was angry, and I would say pretty emotional.
Yeah, indeed. Jill Doherty in Moscow, great to have you there. I want to go now to Katie Bolillis. She's at the Pentagon for us. One thing that's interesting about this, Katie, is this move in from the north, which, you know, the Belarusian leader said was ridiculous just a matter of days ago to Alfred Pleiken. Well, here it is happening. What are they saying at the Pentagon?
Yeah, of course. So what we're hearing from both our sources here in Washington and our sources in the region is, you know, look, U.S. defense and intelligence officials have always seen a potential Russian incursion from Belarus as pretty critical because it offers the Russians this fairly direct path to Kyiv, to the Ukrainian capital. Now, what we have heard from one senior U.S. Senator, Senator Marco Rubio, who is the top Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee, based on what we're told is based on intelligence briefings that he has received, he sees this incursion from Belarus as a part of Russian planning to try to isolate Kyiv from Ukraine's own forces that are operating in the east of the country, sort of on the eastern flank, butting up against these separatist-controlled regions. A sort of attempt to cut off Kyiv from its own forces, which obviously would be hugely significant. But at this point, you know, what officials are telling us is that, look, we're still largely in the fog of war here. The United States Defense Department and intelligence community is still watching closely, trying to get a sense for how this campaign is going to unfold. You know, the bottom line here is what we have been told from officials sort of from the beginning is that Ukraine is massively outgunned, massively outmanned here. The expectation is not that they're going to be able to repel this assault. But the question now, I think, for U.S. officials closely tracking this is how much hurt are they going to be able to extract from Moscow? How difficult are they going to be able to make it? What kind of costs are they going to be able to impose as this invasion continues to unfold. We're obviously also hearing from the Ukrainians that they have seen ground incursions from the east and the south as well. So you can expect that the DoD here in Washington and allied forces overseas are going to be closely watching to try to get a sense for what, who, what, how many, where, and how this is all going to continue to unfold.
Katie Bolilis at the Pentagon, appreciate that. I want to go now to the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. Nick Payton-Walsh is standing by there. Nick, give us a sense of what is happening there and also your thoughts on the breadth of this operation. I mean, the Russians, of course, Vladimir Putin was saying it's just to go into the Donbass to support those separatists. It's way bigger than that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's way bigger than that. It speaks to a mindset of a Kremlin head who is feeling expansionist in ways we haven't seen in Europe in decades. I mean, here we were woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning by 3 or 4 blasts, not in the city centre. As far as you can tell, it's difficult to know where things are detonating in an urban environment like that, but it didn't seem to be here in the city centre at all, near the main port. And there are various sort of military installations around this third largest city in Ukraine, essentially to be sure that it continues to function as Ukraine's main maritime access to the outside world. 6 o'clock, 2 further explosions. We don't know where they were. We don't know what caused them, but it's pretty fair to suggest this is linked to the broader Russian moves across the country. The fact that it is so far south here, this is a Russian-speaking city predominantly, where the Russian general consulate shut down a couple of days ago, shows exactly how wide this is. It is the sort of nightmare situation that when Western intelligence officials first started talking about it, seemed preposterous that Russia would have the resources, the gall to attempt taking over a nation of 40 million. We're not necessarily seeing that scale of occupation, but the initial moves of troops from the north and from the east as well speak to something much wider than just the Donbass being protected, as Vladimir Putin suggested. I mean, the Donbass is an open interpretation, how big you choose to define that. Importantly, when the separatist republics asked for recognition, Vladimir Putin clarified that he regarded that to be both the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, which is an area pretty much 3 times the size of the area they currently control. So that in itself was a massive increase of what we thought maybe Moscow and the separatist ambition was. But the idea you might be seeing troops coming in from the north and the east, and even indications from Crimea too, would speak to this, and what sounded like a mad idea of Russian troops trying to move through the country, cut off the bulk of Ukraine's military, which is in the east, focused around those separatist areas, and then possibly with that Ukrainian military disabled to the east, have an easier time threatening the capital city of Kyiv. But these, when they come out of my mouth, sound like completely absurd ideas that the Russian military has a scope on trying to move into a capital city of nearly 3 million people. So we have to see whether this is a shock and awe type a beginning of a phase, and then we see a bid for requesting concessions from the Ukrainian government. We don't know where we are here, but we do know we've recently seen a Vladimir Putin who clearly has a mindset of intense personal grievances, and just in the speech released last night, warning anybody of outside interference that would bring consequences they hadn't seen in their history. That to me is deeply chilling. We've always been in this debate about he doesn't have big, overarching, terrifying schemes for Europe, but we've got an impression today that that might be something we're beginning to see unfold here. Michael?
Yes, and frankly, terrifying comments coming from the Russian president. Nick Payton-Walsh in Odessa, a critical, a strategic city for Ukraine. Appreciate that, Nick. We'll check in with you later. Let's go now to Atika Schubert, who is here in Lviv. And you and I are both here, and we've both been hearing these sirens going off. I think I've counted 8 or 9 separate times now, warning people to stay indoors and to, stay calm as well, of course.